Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. The Oregon Ducks continue the momentum coming out of the transfer portal, landing another commitment. And one of the top defensive linemen available in the portal, Jamaree Caldwell, coming over from Houston, 6'1", 325 pounds, listed as the number 2 defensive lineman available, number 17 overall player in the transfer portal. And for the Oregon Duck fans that have been listening the last couple of weeks, this was a position that I kind of said might be addressed in the transfer portal. You lose a lot of guys from the inside of that defensive line. And although the talent might be there with some youth, right? Having Jericho Johnson, Aiden Breland coming in the 2024 class, some of that experience and depth might have been lost. And grabbing a guy like Jamaree Caldwell is massive, not only from a personnel standpoint, but this guy's a true playmaker as well. I want to talk about Jamaree Caldwell, what he brings to the table for the Oregon Ducks on defense. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys and a shout out to the Oregon Duck fans. This has been a program that we've talked a ton about over the last week. Obviously, Dan Lanning staying put, Evan Stewart committing to the Oregon Ducks. The amount of support you guys have shown the boys truly has been amazing. Cannot thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content and enjoy the updates, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys more than you know. Without further ado, late Friday night, let's get into Jamaree Caldwell. And the first thing I want to talk about is Jamaree Caldwell was a very sought-after defensive lineman in the portal. Programs like USC in Texas really making a push for Jamaree Caldwell. I've mentioned Jamaree Caldwell as a kind of a premier player or target for a lot of different Power 5 programs over the last month. And the Oregon Ducks are able to get it done in 2023, 8.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks. And although those numbers are extremely impressive for a guy that's playing on the inside of that defensive line, the value I think Jamaree Caldwell brings to a defense goes past what you see in the box score. And this is a guy that is 6'1", 325 pounds, takes on double teams in the run game extremely well, right? He's not necessarily the tallest player, kind of built like a fire hydrant, but plays with low pad level, takes on blocks, wins at the point of attack consistently. I think that Jamaree Caldwell and the impact that he's going to have on this defense, yes, he is going to be a guy that can wreck some games and create penetration, create negative plays. But I'm most excited for Jamaree Caldwell in terms of what he can do for the other players around him. You take a look at the linebackers, right? What is a linebacker's best friend in the game of football? It's a defensive line that keeps the linebackers clean, right? Eating up double teams, not letting offensive linemen work up two linebackers. Jamaree Caldwell is kind of one of those guys. And so, yes, Jamaree Caldwell is improving the inside of that defensive line from a player's perspective, but I think he's going to improve the linebackers as well. And you take a look at what the Oregon Ducks have in terms of the inside of that defensive line. You lose guys like Taki and Popo. Those guys were kind of stalwarts on the inside of that defensive line, and you kind of lacked a little bit of experience, you might say, right? So you have guys like Aiden Breland and Jericho Johnson coming in, Elijah Rushing on the outside. I'm a huge fan of a guy like Amari Washington, but you didn't have guys that have necessarily done it at consistent level at the Power 5 level. Jamaree Caldwell can be that guy. Was extremely good for Houston, very good against the run, but also has some juice in the pass rush as well. You take a look at the game against Texas, probably the best game that I saw from Jamaree Caldwell all year, had 2 sacks against the Texas offensive line. That was very good. Jamaree Caldwell, for someone 6'1", 325 pounds, very, very quick off the football, knows how to use his hands, and his hands are like cinder blocks. I mean, very, very powerful hands. He wins at the point of attack, had a 7.5% pass rush win rate, which is very solid for a guy on the inside of the defensive line. And again, that Texas film was the film that kind of stood out to me. I think film that a lot of Power 5 coaches looked at and said, that's a very good Texas offensive line. And Jamaree Caldwell at times really had his way. So I think this is a massive get for the Oregon Ducks. And again, you take a look at what Oregon has done in the transfer portal. This was kind of the last piece of the puzzle, right? I mean, you see this Oregon team from a depth chart standpoint. We broke it down the other day. I mean, there's not many holes in this depth chart heading into the 2024 season, heading into the Big Ten, which, side note, like, you go into the Big Ten, you want to make sure the line of scrimmage is taken care of. I think a guy like Jamaree Caldwell takes care of that line of scrimmage. So he's a guy that you love to have heading into Big Ten play in 2024, but more or less, you take a look at kind of a checkbox, and you take it to this Oregon team, right? The quarterback situation, very, very good hands with Dylan Gabriel, Dante Moore. Obviously, the wide receiver position, with or without Evan Stewart, was going to be very good. You add Evan Stewart, you feel really good about what you have in the wide receiver room. The offensive line with guys like Josh Connolly and Johnny Cornelius, you look at that offense and say there's not many holes in that roster and that depth chart. And then you look at the defense. And I think one of the holes that we saw emerge for the Oregon Ducks was, all right, you lose some guys in the back end, guys like Evan Williams. You go out and grab a safety in Kobe Savage, who really, in my mind, is kind of an Evan Williams 2.0, a guy that's played a lot of football, is really good in the tackle box. And then maybe you have some concerns at the cornerback spot. You go out and get a guy like Cam Alexander, who at UTSA had 15 passes defended, was a first-team all-conference guy. So then you check out, you kind of check off the depth at that cornerback position, and you continue to scroll down, and it's just kind of loaded with this Oregon team in the transfer portal didn't need that much, right? This team was very good in 2023. They're returning a lot of guys to the 2024 season. They didn't need that much. One of the things that we said you would like to see them address was that interior of the defensive line, right? You lose guys like Taki and Popo, who, and this is not me being critical of those guys. I think they were very solid for the Oregon Ducks. My one concern, or not even concern, but kind of when you look at this roster and you said, what can improve? What's that 1% that can get the Oregon Ducks kind of over the hump? It was maybe some difference makers on the inside, right? Because you lose Brandon Dorless, Popo, and Taki. I think Jamaree Caldwell could be that difference maker that the Oregon Ducks wanted. And we said they might only go after an interior guy after spring practice, see what you get with some of the true freshmen like Jericho Johnson and Aiden Breland. But they go out and get proactive and get another body that is certainly going to help this defense in 2024. Now you look at this defensive line. I mean, Amari Washington, Jordan Birch coming back was absolutely massive. You have guys like Blake Purchase, Mateo Yu, and then the three true freshmen that are coming in. I'd throw in Xadavian Sims as well. You suddenly feel really good about this defensive line too. So I'm looking at this Oregon team, and we talked about it the other day. And even as a Michigan fan, like you look at Oregon, you look at the Big Ten and say, this is a team that's going to come in and compete right away for a conference championship. This team is built like that. I think Dan Lanning has done a really good job getting this team ready to win in the Big Ten immediately. Jamaree Caldwell certainly going to help with that. Late Friday night was not going to miss an opportunity to talk about them Oregon Ducks in the transfer portal. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. This is a program that's been a blast to talk about. You guys have shown a ton of support. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.